Hey, what's up? Hope everyone's doing okay. So this week is week 19, 19 out of 50. So remember, we're reading the whole Bible, and we're going by about 14 pages a day. In my Bible, the King James Version of the Bible. So I don't know, it differentiates how many chapters, but it comes out to be like an hour and a half to 2 hours of reading, maybe a little more depending on how much you're reading and how slow or how fast, and how much you're concentrating on the material. But it's week 19 out of 50. And and then every day, Monday through Friday, we have different days that we're picking a theme with inside the reading in order to concentrate on that or to reflect on that theme inside the reading of that week in order for us to better like kind of reflect on it. And so what I'm doing right now is, since I've already read through it before, I go over each of these themes before I read, and then I read on Friday, which is today. You can do it different ways. You can read on Monday, or you can read on Sunday, depending on the way that you want to do it. But I have Sunday as the first day of the week. Actually, I have Monday the first day of the week. Sunday is actually the readings. So I don't know why I don't. Well, I guess I don't read it on Sunday because I work on Sunday, and so Friday I have off, and so I just read it at the end of the week. So it depends on what day of the week you have it, or you can read just like little bits of the little bit at a time, Monday through Friday. And I already have it mapped out, so I have each of these themes, and so it's First Chronicles 13 through Second Chronicles 7. And so I think chronological order comes from the idea of Chronicles, where you're kind of going through the whole entire history of man up to that point, at least, or when Chronicles was written in chronological order from the beginning to the end. And you can see that it's hard to know which one of the Gospels is in chronological order, because they all jump around, and you don't know which one is chronological order. And so I think different people have different opinions on it, if any of them are, but I think one of them is. But I don't really know which one is, or if there's any fact to that, or what the proof is. I imagine there's evidence, but they definitely aren't in chronological. They're not in the same order as each gospel. They don't go over the same things as some things in one gospel will be in the beginning of it, and then that same thing in a different gospel, that same event will be towards the end of that gospel. And so for Monday, my main theme that I had, or the thing that I reflected on Monday, I thought about was David delivered Psalms to Asaph and his brethren. And so when I read today, I don't really remember reading about that. Um, that's interesting. But I mean, I would imagine it's in the reading. I have to double check that real quick. But when David, he writes all the Psalms, and him and Solomon. So between those two of them, and we don't really know who writes Proverbs and who writes Psalms. Um, but there's obviously there's a lot of intellectual in there, and there's a lot of wisdom, and people still refer back to that even today with the Christian Bible or with the New Testament. You still refer back to the Old Testament, and there's a lot of information. There's a lot of wisdom that can be found in Psalms and in Proverbs. And then when I actually get to Psalms and Proverbs, I have it mapped out a lot more for each of those days. And then for Tuesday, the main theme that I talked about was Hanun took David's servants and treated them shamefully. Or I don't know, I would imagine I'm saying his name incorrectly. But it's interesting because, when I don't remember, it was Hanun's dad, when David had some issues, or Hanun's dad helped David, and then so when Hanun's dad died, David went to go help Hanun, but all the different princes told them, like, okay, you think David's here to help you, but really he's here to hurt you. And so he convinced them to treat his people shamefully, and to shave their beards, and to cut off their pants right around the waist, and then send them away. And then they says he realized when he looked at a certain word in David's eyes, then he gathered an army together to fight against David. And I'm not exactly sure what the word is. I remember reading it, and I was like, what does this word even mean? But obviously made it seem like David would be pretty mad about him. And so even though treating somebody shamefully or dishonoring them is like really, really bad, you dishonor them, you hurt them, and because we are eternal beings, and so we're here in this body for a while, but the dishonor might last, for an eternity, or the shame or this hurt lasts for an eternity. So hurting somebody is bad. Dishonoring them can be also super bad, because you're hurting them, you're hurting their being, you're hurting their soul, and you're hurting them for, an eternity. It can last for an eternity, this effect that you have on them, not just in this life or this body that you have, but for an eternity. And it's hard to think like that. It's hard to understand that, but this is played out right here, I think, or at least you can see some of this played out here, because this was like pretty much an act of war. And so David went against them, and then David won. Obviously David wins pretty much every battle that he's ever been in. And then on Wednesday, the main theme that I had was seek the Lord and he will be found, forsake him and he will cast you out forever. And I think he was talking to, I don't remember if he's talking to Solomon or he's talking to David, but I think this is, to all of us. And how do you seek the Lord and he will be found, and forsake him and he will cast you out forever? So how do you do this? I feel like for me, at least in my life, the way that I understand this, or the way that I interpret this, is that in every decision that you have in your life, you have the ability to choose right or wrong. And if you seek God, then he'll give you the ability, if you seek him, then he'll give you the right answer to how to go forward correctly. If you forsake him, then you're gonna get the wrong answer. If you don't go to him for how to handle a situation, then he'll cast you out, and you won't be able to come to him advice. You won't be able to know what to do. And so in every situation that you have in your life, in every situation that you come about, I mean, every single situation that you make, if you are seeking God, or if you seek God, then he will give you the correct path forward. If you're not seeking him, every situation that you come into your life, you'll go the incorrect path. And you'll go down this path of being away from God and being away from your creator, and then just not existing eventually, or not wanting to not exist at least. And the more that you go down the path, the more you want to exist, I would imagine. And so I think this is what's meant by seeking out God, at least for me, the way that I view it right now. Like, obviously, if you seek God out, then he'll manifest in your life. But I think that he'll manifest in your life more if you make the right decisions and you make him happier. And so in every situation, every opportunity that arises, if you seek out God, then you'll go down the correct path. If you don't seek him out, then you'll go down the wrong path, and you'll get further and further away from him, and further towards your own destruction. And then if you seek him out, then you go down the correct path, and you go towards him, and towards your more and more towards eternal life, and eternal honor and glory beside God, our creator and our master and friend, Jesus Christ. And then for Thursday, I have Zadok the priest. And it's interesting because, the priests are different than the prophets, but the seers would seem to be the same as the prophets. I think, what's his name? Samuel is referred to as both a seer and as a prophet. So I'm pretty sure seers and prophets are pretty much the same thing. And then priests, they weren't necessarily prophets, but they were in charge of, what the tribe of the tribe of the Levites was responsible for, and Aaron and his lineage. They were responsible for having the different roles and that you have inside the temple. And I don't think that a priest is what you would think of as a pastor or a preacher now. I don't think these are the same at all. I really don't. I don't know why I have a very kind of negative view of modern day Christianity as far as the pastors and the preachers go, and the way that they are portrayed in the church, or what their roles are inside the modern day Christian church, whether it be a non-denominational or Catholic or Christian, or a certain branch like Lutheran, or a Mormon church, or the Seventh-day Adventists, they don't really have pastors or preachers, and I think this is probably the better way to do it. And I think I've always kind of thought this, at least, or stated this, that I do think the the Jehovah Witnesses, Seventh-day Adventists have a pastor and preacher, the same thing, and I don't find this very appealing, or I don't feel like it's the correct way to do anything. But the Jehovah Witnesses, I do think that the way that they run their church, as far as going to actual church sermon, I think is probably closer to the way things that should be done. I think that everything needs improvement. I think it's easier to say what's going wrong and to make your own and to show how it should be done. And but that's what I'm trying to do is with this channel, and I'm trying to let the Church of God grow from what it was initially, after that you see in the New Testament. And so I'm just trying to build that up, or what I see in my mind, what it should be, and trying to do that. And I think that maybe it's possible I try to create this, and then I get the chance to and the opportunity to, and I realize that these other churches have done a very good job, and it's easy to make complaints, but when it comes down to these choices that are made and how to structure the church, that this is the best way to do things. But I think that it's more than likely this is the wrong way to do things, and I see it in my life, at least in the way that situation I've had, that it's not ideal, and it can need some improvement. So, but we'll see, right? It's easy, like I said, I could keep saying, it's easy to say what's going wrong, but it's a lot harder to model and to create something in the right way. And so for Friday, I have the main theme that I have on Friday to reflect on is for thou only knowest the heart of the children of men. And so he's talking to God, and for God only knows the hearts of the children of men. So God only really knows the heart. And I do think that God can reveal to his people, or to his host, or to whoever he wants to, what man wants, but you're never going to know the heart of what your heart is. You're never going to know what the heart of others is. You're never going to really understand any type of truth unless you go through God, or go to God and through Jesus Christ. And so without this, you'll never know the heart of man, and no man, you won't even know your own heart. You won't even know yourself unless you go through God, because God only knows your heart, and he can reveal it to whoever he wants to. And so if you don't go to God or you don't understand him, then you're never going to understand your own heart, let alone anyone else's heart. Or maybe maybe it'd be easier to understand other people's hearts, but you won't understand their heart or your own heart. You won't understand your motives, what you do, or anything. It will all be just opaqueness. It will all be just impossible to understand or perceive. And you might believe that you can see, and might believe that you can perceive, but you won't really understand. And that's what's really difficult too, is that every man is justified in his own eyes, and so you think that you perceive, you think you know your own heart, you think you're doing the right thing, but everybody thinks that. So who's really doing the right thing? Who really is? And I think that just knowing that and trying to understand that, and just always trying to go towards the right direction, for everybody, every individual, just trying to do the right thing and go to the right thing and to do what God wants you to do is a lifelong pursuit, and you never really know if you get there. And so a lot of people want to say that they know that they're going to heaven, but I feel like you never really know you're going to heaven, and you don't really want to think that or be in that mindset, because you always want to be thinking that you can be doing better, and not get complacent or not feel like you've made it and you have the correct path. Maybe one day I'll get there and I'll think this is true, and I'll come up with new information or a new understanding of things, and this might be the right way. But for me right now, I feel like I just a continuous path forward, and to continue to try to grow and continue to try to understand. So yeah, that's 1 Chronicles 13 through 2 Chronicles 7. Lots of names. The same thing as last week. There's lots of names, and I just kind of read through the names. I can't pronounce, most of them, 90% of them, or maybe 80% I can't pronounce. And so I don't really understand what the names are, but there are some hidden gems there. And hidden gems that I got through here was interesting, because in Chronicles, I think it's 2 Chronicles 6, right about the end of where I was reading today, it talked about how the people worshipped both God and David. And so the people always say, oh, Christ is the only one that has worship, that's why he's God. But in the Bible, Nebuchadnezzar worships Daniel, and it also seems right here that the people worship God and David. And so this isn't true that only Christ gets worshipped because they use his name worship. But it's interesting because if you use an NIV, both these verses, or both these events, both in Daniel with Nebuchadnezzar and here in Chronicles, 2 Chronicles with David, they don't say that they worship God and David. They say they bow down to God and David. And then same thing with Daniel. It says he bows down. Nebuchadnezzar bows down to Daniel, and doesn't worship him. So you have these different versions of the Bible, everything but the KJV. That's why I think the KJV is so important, because you have these different writings, these different readings, and although they're subtle, they make a very big difference, because one thing people say is that only Christ gets worship, so therefore he's God. And that's not true, because in the Bible, King James Version, you have at least these two events right here where it seems to indicate that Nebuchadnezzar worships Daniel and then the people worship David. And so it's depending on the Bible that you have, and so I think that's why it's really important to use the KJV. I would imagine there's other incidents as well, but you have a different view of reality if you use a different Bible besides the KJV. And I think that other Christians or other people, I don't know if you call them Christians, but other people, maybe they are Christians, trying to do their best. They took the King James Version of the Bible, and then they changed it depending on how they view reality in order to better reflect their view of reality instead of what the truth is. And so that's why I really think it's important to always stay with the KJV. But just reading the 2 Chronicles all through these names, you have this event that happens, and it's like a very hidden gem that you have to read really from the beginning to the end of the Bible to get all these gems and get all these information. Because if you're jumping around and you're not reading chronological, then you miss these events, you miss these hidden gems, and you miss these things that happen that are really important, that are subtle, but they're very important in the whole entire theology of reality. And so without this reading from cover to cover, I think you miss a lot of these gems and these important points that reflect a better reality. Without it, you're just jumping around from place to place, rereading the same things, and just just keep on reiterating what you think you already know instead of learning something new. But if you read the Bible from the beginning to the end, then you make sure you get all of it. You're not missing anything, because it's all very important. And there's these tiny little things in here that I think that it's just a better way of doing it. And so that's why we're doing it, and this is why I'm making a calendar out of it. And I think it's important to do it every single year. And that way, if the religious authority, if anybody gets too corrupt, they can't just start changing the Bible the way they want it to, because everybody understands it, everybody's reading it. And so you can't just distort reality in order to better reflect your own personal opinion and to advantage yourselves if everybody's reading the Bible from cover to cover. So anyways, I hope everyone's doing okay. And, hopefully I'm going to get some better equipment here for this channel. And hopefully God can bless me and I can start doing well, because I know this quality and stuff isn't great, but hopefully I can improve the quality and I can improve the channel, and hopefully we can all grow the Church of God together. Hope everyone's doing okay. God bless and happy truth seeking.